Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Riyad, and I'm the CEO of Enough, a spin-off of the Waste Not, Want Not student initiatives that started at Concordia University in 2016. Now, should all university students have to learn about sustainability and the climate crisis in their curriculum? I encourage you to share your thoughts on that question in the comments. Now, in a recent referendum question by the Concordia Student Union, the CSU, which I'm going to show on the screen right now, about 89% of Concordia undergraduate students answered yes to that question, with a turnout of 21%, which appears to be the highest in CSU's history. Now, according to the currently available data on STARS, which is the gold standard in North America of assessing sustainability in university, only 19% of Concordian graduates from 19% of Concordians graduated from programs with any mention of sustainability in their curriculums. The national average in Canada is 37%. Today, I'm joined by three guests, Maxime Lakat, founder and executive director of Canadian Business Youth Council for Sustainable Development, Professor Shannon Lloyd, Dr. Shannon Lloyd, assistant professor in the John Molson School of Business at Concordia University, where she's researching the alignment of corporate environmental performance with collective environmental goals, and Victoria Paul, Vice President Academic at the John Molson Sustainable Enterprise Committee, also known as JSEC. Now, the Canadian Business Youth Council for Sustainable Development released a manifesto last year named Our Future, Our Business, in which it calls for all business students in Canada to learn about the climate crisis in their curriculum. This campaign was supported by 65 youth organizations, 100 civil society organizations, and 130 high-level executives. Both Professor Lloyd and student representatives have been involved in the curriculum redesign process, which will ensure that all GMSB students learn about sustainability in their curriculum. Now, without further ado, let's begin. And I would like to start by playing a little segment that ran on CBC 6 p.m. News covering the sustainability referendum campaign.
Committee at Concordia University wants climate to have a bigger role in what students learn. The group made the issue a student referendum question, taking its inspiration from another Quebec university. Matt Demour explains.
A few years ago, climate science professor Damon Matthews brought an idea to his department to have a bigger climate curriculum at Concordia University, which could reach more students.
It's a civil issue. It's a social justice issue. I mean, there's all I can't think of a single university discipline that would not benefit.
The idea didn't go any farther, but now a committee at the school is taking it to students. A referendum question in this week's student union by-election poses the following. Should there be a commitment that all Concordia students will learn about sustainability and the climate crisis in their curriculum by 2030? One of the people who got the question on the ballot is postdoctorate fellow Carlos Riyad. He says this gives students the chance to send an important message to the university.
This is really the spirit of this referendum question, is to tell them, well, this is the biggest challenge of our lifetimes. Please give us the tools to be able to contribute to solutions.
Riyad doesn't want to see a one-size-fits-all approach to teaching students about climate change and sustainability. Instead, he says it should be tailored and relevant to each student's discipline. It's a similar idea to the one adopted at Laval University in Quebec City several years ago.
The basic is that under our study regulations, any student that goes through an undergrad program has to have a basic understanding of what is sustainable development.
With the vote ongoing, Concordia wouldn't comment on the referendum question, but a spokesperson told CBC that the university is working on several programs that will incorporate or focus on sustainability. Students have until Thursday to cast their votes in the referendum. Matt Demour, CBC News, Montreal.
Bon. Well, let's start with the exciting news here. Professor Lloyd, the GMSB faculty has been conducting a curriculum review for a few years now, in part to better integrate sustainability in the curriculum, and you have been involved throughout this process. Can you share some of the outcomes of that process and how what changes will take place in the curriculum to ensure that all GMSB students will learn about sustainability?
Sure. So first, let me thank you, Carlos, for organizing these conversations. And Victoria and Maxime, I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you. It's always great to talk to students who are working to make the world a better place. So Carlos, to answer your question, I think I'd first like to offer a slight adjustment to the explanation about the process. We started the process in the fall of 2019 without any predefined sustainability or other learning objectives. Basically started with a blank sheet of paper. So instead, we formed several committees and subcommittees that included instructors and staff and student representatives from across the JMSB faculty. We held consultation meetings with diverse stakeholders. We investigated important trends in business, accreditation requirements, offerings by other universities, and of course, employer and student needs. Based on all the input, we developed a common set of competency goals and learning objectives for all JMSB undergraduate BCom students, and then developed a plan for synthesizing those competencies and objectives into a reasonable number of courses. This, of course, not surprisingly, included several goals and learning objectives related to ethics, business sustainability, and of course, social responsibility. So to fulfill some of these goals and objectives, we proposed a 1.5 credit course to basically establish fundamental competencies in ethics, sustainability, and social responsibility for all undergraduate students. But in addition, we will continue to integrate disciplinary specific aspects of sustainability and social responsibility into our disciplinary courses, of course. So for example, courses on global business, financial markets, operations management, strategy, and perhaps others will have some components related to sustainability. So to answer your question, the primary change for JMSB undergraduate students is that they will all be required to take a 1.5 credit course on ethics, sustainability, and social responsibility.
Wonderful. That's exciting. And so you're doing it at both levels. So the core level where you have all the students, and then also the disciplinary stages where you're looking at some of the courses where you can integrate.
And we're doing that now. We have, there are a number of students now that have topics related to sustainability integrated into them. And sometimes we don't refer to it as sustainability or social responsibility. It's part of, supply chain management, for example. So we do have some of that already going on where there might be topics that are integrated into courses, and we'll continue to do that as appropriate.
Beautiful. Do you know when the new course will be introduced, or be, which cohort will start taking that course?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're still in the process of getting the proposal approved. It has been approved by the Faculty Undergraduate Curriculum Committee and the Faculty Academic Programs Committee. Nice. It is now, I think actually today, it's being reviewed by the Faculty Council. So we believe it will go through without problem. And if it does, the current plan is for the new curriculum to go live in 2023, fall of 2023.
Okay, so I'll follow up on what happens on council today.
Absolutely.
Maxime, our business manifesto calls for all business students in Canada to learn about sustainability and the climate crisis and their curriculum. And that manifesto has been widely supported, as I said in the introduction. Can you speak about why you identify the need for business schools around Canada to commit to teaching all their students about the climate crisis to be a best practice for them? Why should business students care about climate crisis?
For sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Kara, for organizing this event. And I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the insights that will be shared by Victoria and Shannon today. So thanks for that. But to answer your question, I think it's a twofold answer for business schools and for business students to care about the climate crisis, because it's both an opportunity but also a responsibility to care about it and to act upon it. So on the opportunity side of things, the low carbon economy has shown, we've all seen these articles showing how many jobs and meaningful jobs will be created thanks to the low carbon economy. But also for a business, it's an existential question, right? Like if you do not care about the climate crisis over the long term, you're not going to be profitable anymore, right? It's not a question of maximizing profit. Sure, sometimes you can, have higher profits if you have more responsible practices. But I think over the long term, it won't be a question of maximizing profit. It's to actually stay alive. Right. And I think a lot of businesses might actually go out of business if they're not starting to take more responsible practices, also taking into consideration climate risks and all these things. So it's a question of opportunity and really existential need for businesses. But also there is the responsibility aspect of it. Right. So it's always good to make a business case for something. But at the same time, we need to be careful not to refrain ourselves from thinking broader than just a business case. There's also the moral and ethical aspect of it. And companies for a very long time have, not all, but many companies have contributed to greenwashing, not paying their fair share, over profiting from, the planet and our society. And so there's a real responsibility for businesses to play a role in the green and social transitions of our society. So business students, and if they want to be the future and want to understand where businesses are going, because it's definitely going there, they need to understand that. The last part of my answer, beyond the opportunity and the responsibility, is specifically on the meaning. I think there's currently a very big loss of meaning in our consumerist and hyper individualistic society. And I think a lot of young people are kind of, not finding their way currently in the society that we're selling to them, right? And so I think when you start opening your eyes on the climate crisis and you manage to find a way to get your career and actually your life, right? Because a career and our work, although it's not our entire life, it's a significant portion of it. So if you find a way to make your career and your life contribute to some extent to improve society, I think it makes your job, your career, but also your life much more meaningful, which would be a great way to respond to that loss of meaning from the consumerist and hyper-individualistic society that we have.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also resonate a lot with what you're saying about greenwashing, because there has been, I think as a society, we need to get a lot better at seeing through greenwashing. My pet peeve greenwashing example is all the restaurants with compostable straws, but no compost bins. It's just my pet peeve. But Victoria, I know firsthand that JSEC has been advocating for more sustainability content and curriculum for many years and throughout, and many teams of JSEC has been involved in this. Can you speak to these business students' interest and support for more sustainability in curriculum?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me, and thank you to the colleagues here to talk about what they have to share as well. It's definitely interesting to hear what other people's point of view are on things. So thank you for this opportunity. So indeed, it's not new that JSEC has been pushing for sustainability-related content within the GMSB curriculum. And there is a valid reason and motivation for why we've been doing that for the last few years. So actually, through a survey that we conducted, we collected data from over 400 students, and 97% of them have answered that they considered the education of sustainability and business practices highly important, but only 50% of these students understood how sustainability is relevant in their current major today. So obviously, there is a disconnect, and this gap or disconnect comes to show that students understand that the sustainability topics play a vital role in business environment. However, they have no knowledge of how to necessarily apply sustainability concepts into their future jobs. And they don't necessarily understand how these concepts can relate to the jobs that they'll have graduating from JMSB. So anyways, because of this disconnect, JSEC seeks to push JMSB faculty to want to teach these application techniques, whether it's in HR or finance, BTM, or management classes, because at the end of their degree, every student should understand how, whether they become a financial analyst or a content creator, or even a hiring manager, that the decisions that they'll need to make or to engage in will and should ultimately be influenced by some sustainability concepts. And as of right now, the students that took our survey, only 42% of them carried little to no understanding of sustainability, yet they have demonstrated an interest to learn, and there's an opportunity there for that.
Yeah, and I actually have some little print screen from some of the questions that you had in the survey, and it's clear that when you ask the students that would they like to see more sustainability in the curriculum, the absolute majority of them said definitely yes and probably yes. And also in the referendum campaign that we ran in here, it's broken down by faculty, and we see that 85% of the voters from GMSB said yes to that question, calling on Concordia to commit to teaching all students about sustainability in the climate crisis. And that's about one third of the undergraduate students showed up to that, which is amazing. Like usually in a CSU by-election, it's 5% turnout. So I think it's a clear message from the students that's representative of their voices, that this is something that they want to learn about, and it's yeah. Now I know that the course is in the process of being is in the process of being designed. Professor Lloyd and other and people from JSEC will be involved. What do you want to see in this course, Victoria? What kind of topics do you think are most relevant to all business students?
Yeah, from my personal experience, the best way to learn about sustainability topics and apply them in a business setting would be through case studies. So I would be hoping, in my opinion, I'm a strong believer that using a case approach for this class would be the most beneficial to students. This way they can learn about the different goals and objectives in parallel to learning how to apply them in their future roles or future jobs that they're going to have leaving JMSB. So in terms of topics that are more relevant in a business education, I would definitely consider touching on the 3 pillars of corporate sustainability, which are economic, environmental, and social, right? So definitely touch on that and build a good base and good understanding of those concepts. And then if the course allows, to then look into going to further in depth on economic sustainability topics, such as like either, I don't know, impact investing or circular economy, sustainable investing tools, just sustainability, return on investment, and learning how these, there's tangible and intangible benefits and so forth. And maybe even going further into government green incentives and carbon taxes and so forth. So I believe that teaching these topics is a huge opportunity for professors to involve students in how to engage in sustainable practices and still have a profitable business. A little bit what Maxime was saying earlier. And this way students will be involved, all while understanding the importance of sustainability within a business and an economy.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Thank you, Victoria. Now, Professor Lloyd, I've been advocating for Concordia to make that institutional commitment to teaching all students about sustainability and the climate crisis for many, many years. And the number one response that I get is academic freedom, or the concern that I get is academic freedom. The idea is that administration cannot tell professors what to teach, which is a legitimate concern. And I'm wondering if you can speak about the process that took place at GMSB, about how you did that commitment at the faculty level, and at the same time, respected academic freedom.
Sure. Well, I guess first of all, I have a lot to say about this topic of academic freedom. So I'm really not sure about the argument that academic freedom has been a barrier. I think sustainability topics are more likely to be introduced in courses because of academic freedom. For example, in a core course that I coordinate on critical thinking and contemporary business, we often use sustainability-related business cases to demonstrate the theories that we're covering, and we're able to do this because of academic freedom. And so I would further argue that sustainability issues related to gender, sexuality, race, inequality, for example, are taught in our universities because of academic freedom. So I would suggest that academic freedom is more of an enabler than a barrier. But second, we do have constraints when it comes to academic freedom. These come in the form of accreditation standards, as we've mentioned before, professional standards, which some of our degrees are we have mandated requirements for the professional standards, and of course institutional requirements. And so the standards and requirements are constantly evolving, and increasingly, fortunately, they're emphasizing sustainability and social responsibility, and we will respond to those requirements. But third, I'd like to point out that numerous JMSB faculty have been developing and teaching sustainability content for more than a decade, maybe 2 decades. We have 4 electives focused on sustainability topics, including business sustainability, sustainable management, sustainable investing, and sustainable marketing. In addition, several faculty members currently cover sustainability topics in their disciplinary courses, the topics that are relevant to their courses, including courses in accounting, supply chain management, and organizational theory. So we have been doing that. We've been doing that again because of academic freedom. And then finally, our students do have the option to do a sustainability minor through Concordia's Loyola College. And we currently have 29 JMSB students who are enrolled in the minor or elective group in sustainability studies. And I would argue that that's a very effective way to structure a minor, because I think that it's important when we focus on sustainability, that we do it from an interdisciplinary perspective, and that we think about how other disciplines might think about sustainability. So I think that that's a pretty effective route for having a sustainability minor. So I guess, I think to answer your question, I would suggest that academic freedom has already played an important role in increasing the sustainability content and getting us to the point that we are. But I think that the timing of the new required course is related more to the timing of the curriculum redesign. We can't redesign the curriculum very frequently because it would disrupt so many students' undergraduate education that, the requirements would constantly be changing. And so we can't do it very frequently. And it's also, if you remember my description of the process, when we work together to collaboratively redesign something, it takes a lot of time. And so we can't do it very often. And in fact, our last curriculum redesign was quite a while ago. And what I would say is that if we had gone through the redesign 5 years ago, we probably would have added a sustainability course then. So we're going through the redesign now. We're looking at the situation that we're in now, and we're adding that course.
Yeah. And that, just to speak about that process a little bit more, that redesign process was triggered by the faculty leadership, like Dean Anne-Marie Cotu. I'm assuming, I think she did trigger that curriculum review. So I think that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that the leadership at the faculty level, at the institution level, can facilitate these processes that are deliberate for the right reasons, without, coming across as infringing on academic freedom. Is that fair to say?
I think absolutely.
Okay. I wanted, so last Fireside, we had Provost and Whitelaw, and also Duncan Ross, who's the Chief Data Officer at Times Higher Education, who actually just got named yesterday as one of the top 100 most influential data practitioners in the world. And he was the architect of Times Higher Education Impacts Ranking that assesses how universities are responding to each one of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, by the United Nations. And he had also this to say on academic freedom, so I want to play that video now. I've been a student representative at Concordia for some 6-7 years, and I've sat on an inordinate number of committees. I sat on Senate, curriculum committees, sustainability committees, what have you. And I've been trying to advocate for the university to adopt an institutional commitment to teaching all students about sustainability. And the number one issue that comes up is academic freedom. And the idea is that senior administration cannot tell professors what to teach. And, my understanding from Times Higher Education Impact Ranking is that you give points to universities who have made, a commitment to meaningful education that's around the SDGs, that's applicable to all students. And so I guess my question is, are you rewarding universities that infringe on the academic freedom of the professors?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that perspective. It strikes me as quite an interesting line to take. For example, if your university has a physics course, you expect your physics teachers, your physics lecturers to lecture to a curriculum. And you would be quite surprised if a physics lecturer decided that they were going to decide that gravity didn't exist and therefore insist on teaching to that. Because it's not as if a lot of the aspects that we're talking about here are in dispute. Climate change is not a fringe theory. It is a well understood, it is a well established and almost universally agreed upon fact. Almost universally, obviously there are a few people somewhat south of your border, perhaps, shall we say. But broadly speaking, these are not contentious issues. So I think that there is room within curricula to actually include aspects of sustainability, of climate action, which needn't infringe on academic freedom. Of course, how individual academics choose to teach it, what they want to focus on, what the things are that are important to them will vary. And we try and write our questions in the impact ranking to be open to that, to allow freedom for people to choose what are the most important things to them. But I think there is this sort of obvious statement, which is if you decide that teaching about sustainability is important, build an appropriate curriculum, discuss that obviously with your academics to understand what you need to have in it. Actually, that I don't see as being an infringement on academic freedom.
Bon. Maxime, I do want to go back to your call on teaching, on having all business students in Canada learn about sustainability and the climate crisis in their curriculum. How do we execute your call to action? How can we ensure that all business schools across Canada learn from or follow that process that GMSB has just went through or is still going through, to ensure that all their students learn about the climate crisis?
For sure. Great question. Well, it's I would say again, it's a two-way approach, bottom up and also top down. So our organization is really taking both approaches because changing curriculum is a very, or at least advocating for curriculum change is a very complicated thing and has many layers to it. So we go about it in two different ways as an organization. I'm sure there are many other ways as well to get nationwide momentum and change, but the approaches we decided to take are the following. The first one is the bottom up. The manifesto campaign is obviously a perfect representation of that bottom up, right? It was the first time in Canada's history that 65 youth organizations, both traditional business undergraduate societies, but also, student organizations dedicated to sustainability, and also youth organizations outside of universities kind of convened and created a manifesto on the future of business, right? What we as the next generation of leaders imagine as the future of business and what are topics that we would like to engage more with, right? And the approach was, the manifesto wasn't to tell business schools, here are the things you need to teach, but rather here are some of the questions that we would like to think more critically about. So yes, our manifesto is pretty prescriptive when it talks about what future we would like to see, and we call out the greenwashing, and we are pretty detailed, right? Like the manifesto, while it is 20 statements, the whole text is 25 pages long, right? So but our approach is not to tell to business professors or business schools, here's what you need to teach, but rather here are topics that we think are important as the next generation of leaders and that we would like to think more critically about and we would like to engage more with. And right now, most of these topics are not being covered. So a lot of things still need to be, figured out. Actually, I think academic researchers have a big role to play in things like combating greenwashing and impact measurement, right? In impact measurement right now, there's a lot of greenwashing. I think the scientific and academic lens will truly help to come up with new frameworks, which will ensure that the marketing sometimes doesn't take over the more scientific approach to impact measurement. So I think actually professors have a lot to contribute to this. So I think the first thing in the bottom up is we wanted to put a manifesto out that clearly sends a very strong signal that there's a desire from the next generation of leaders to learn more about sustainability. That was the first thing in terms of bottom up, create kind of like a momentum and a strong voice about this. The second thing that we're doing is we really want to empower local students in business schools across the country. So actually, if you look at Canada, there's about less than 15 student organizations in business schools that are dedicated to sustainability. So there are 80 business schools in Canada, but there's only 15 of those business schools that have an organization like Victoria's organization, or like the one I presided at McGill when I was still a student, that are fully dedicated to sustainability within the business faculty, right? You have Enactus chapters, but Enactus chapters are really more a social entrepreneurship incubator. They don't, like most of the chapters in Canada, don't organize events and advocate for curriculum change and do projects like a student organization that is fully dedicated to sustainability is. It's just a different model, right? So, when you make that realization that there are only 15 business schools that do have a student organization, you realize that there's really a lost opportunity. And whether it's JSECs work at JMSB or my former organization, the Desautels Sustainability Network at the Desautels Faculty of Management at McGill, where we had been organizing big events that contributed to creating a momentum, right? So for example, each year we would organize a sustainable finance summit that had between 100 to 150 participants each year. Well, for example, that created a different perception of students of sustainable finance, which pushes professors to realize, oh, students are really keen on learning more about this topic. Then we did a variety of other student initiatives to really push for this momentum around sustainable finance. And at the end, we asked for curriculum change, and we said we would really like to have a course taught at McGill on sustainable finance. But it was our student organization that asked for that, right? We advocated for that. We weren't the one who ended up creating the course, because it got created 2 years ago now. We weren't the one creating the syllabus and saying, what needs to be taught in each class and all that, but we were the one really advocating and creating the momentum for it. So I think student organizations have a huge potential for contributing to this change, but unfortunately, most business schools in Canada do not have that. So what we're creating that we're about to release actually next week, a website on which we have worked over 7 months to create a lot of different resources, including a toolkit for curriculum advocacy, so to empower local student leaders to advocate for curriculum change and really pushing the conversation on sustainability, but also another separate toolkit on how to start or grow an existing student organization dedicated to sustainability with best practices. I know that actually some former executives from JSEC and GMSB did contribute to some of the best practices that were gathered for that toolkit. And so we really gathered all that to empower those local students throughout the country to get some bottom-up pressure and some bottom-up change across the country. So that's the first approach. It's really bottom-up, the manifesto, the toolkits to empower the local students. The other way I think we can get nationwide change is more a top-down way as well. So we go about it in different ways. First of all, we very often have conversations with deans, whether it's Dean Anne-Marie Croteau from Concordia or other deans from other business schools. We're often on panels talking with them. We meet with business school associations and, other key players in the business education field, like professors and others. So having conversations with them, that's the first thing. The second thing is policy advocacy. So currently, what we're doing is that we're building a policy advocacy strategy at the federal and the provincial and federal levels, because the reality is, unfortunately, sometimes the reality is much more complex than some people like to imagine. Sustainability is not being taught in business school, not just because there are some professors who are a bit more conservative, and it is real. There is part of that. There are some professors who are a bit more, reticent to changing their course and to integrate the sustainability and all that. But you cannot generalize that. It's not all professors, and the situation is not black or white like that. So while it is a little part of the problem, there are many other issues to it. One of the issues is that business schools actually sometimes lack the funding necessary to actually hire more PhD students in sustainability, to hire more lecturers, and fund even more research in sustainability. They have part of the funding, but more funding could help actually that transition to hire younger professors. That's just almost a fact, I want to say. Often the younger the professors are hired, the more likely they will be interested in sustainability. That doesn't mean that more senior professors are not. It just means overall, and the probability is higher. So the faculty needs that funding, and so while they have part of it, advocating for public policy changes that could incentivize business schools to do even more sustainability research, hire even more, by just creating additional funding that is available there for business schools, could incentivize them without imposing it to them. So we're planning on doing policy advocacy, and the last thing is we're also planning on helping schools re-engage with their alumni who are now industry leaders in sustainability. Most, if not all, business schools in Canada do not systemically track who of their alumni are now sustainability leaders. They are aware of a few names, but they do not systemically track. I graduated from McGill, where there has been a program, an entire major dedicated to sustainable business management since 2013. So, very progressive school. They've, been ahead of the curve for a long time, but even them, they did not systemically track. It was my student organization, was my team, where we had to actually do the research on LinkedIn, and we spent years building a network of over 500 alumni who are now working in sustainability, but we had to do it, right? So now we have basically mapped out most of those sustainability leaders across the country. We're talking about over 1,500 people. We now want to help schools kind of re-engage with those alumni so they can understand the industry demands from an alumni perspective. So that's also like the last top-down way that we're going about it.
Thank you, Maxime. And I'm going to be looking forward to seeing the manifest as the release of that toolkit that you're working on, and I got a chance to review some of it and help add some comments on that. I'm going to try to also mention that on our website we have a page dedicated to that project, sustainability. So enofcanada.ca/sustainability curriculum, and in there we compiled all the work that we have been doing so far, and also added resources from other organizations that are working on sustainability curriculums. The goal is not to replace anybody's work, is to create synergies and collaborate. And so I'll be looking forward to adding your toolkit as well in there, and make sure that it's available to whoever, to our community as well. So thank you for that work. Now, over 130 high-level executives have joined your call for all business students to learn about the climate crisis. And I'm wondering, what have you been hearing from them about the job market's demand with respect to sustainability?
So you're asking me?
Yes, Maxime, sorry.
Okay. I was just not expecting the two questions to be back to back, because I did just speak quite for a bit for the past question, but I can't answer that one. Do you want me to answer? Or do you want to maybe ask Shannon or Victoria another question,
okay, so
and then we can go back to me?
It's
as you want. But it's just okay. I don't want to take 10 consecutive minutes of the recording.
All good. Victoria, now, given your experience at JSEC, advocating for sustainability curriculum, and the experience that has been built up over the years as well, with multiple teams working on this, what advice do you have to the other similar student groups in other business school? Like Maxime talked about, there are 15 universities with similar groups, and I'm wondering, what advice would you share to them on how to effectively advocate for sustainability curriculum?
That's a great question. Thank you. Ultimately, right, JSEC was created for this exact purpose, to advocate for positive change within GMSB and encourage students to continuously learn about sustainability. I think Maxime can agree. It's not a secret that it's extremely challenging to do that and get students engaged all the time. So I think in the last years, we've taken different approaches to showcase to JMSB students that there is a real need for students with sustainability knowledge, and encourage them to keep wanting to learn about it. And we push to do this through several different ways. And usually it's through workshops and events related to sustainability. And what we usually do to try to get more students engaged is we'll collaborate with different student committees, associations within JMSB. Top of my head right now, I'm thinking of how I discovered JSEC, which was through the accounting association. Mm-hmm. As an accounting student, I went to their event that they threw with JSEC, and that's where I became passionate about this. Mm-hmm. And then, I know that we have one coming up with the Finance Association and whatnot. So this is definitely a good way to get an outreach towards a bigger amount of students and get them involved and get them passionate about this as well, or just even aware. And the reality is, sometimes these events will be a huge hit, and other times maybe not so much. Mm-hmm. So if I can say anything, it's important to keep persevering and constantly adapting and changing the ways that we try to get our message out. And just to, not be afraid to try different things. I feel like that's what worked for us in the past.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Now, Professor Lloyd, I referred earlier to Times Higher Education's impact rankings, and in that assessment that they asked universities, one of the questions is whether or not they have a commitment to meaningful education around the SDGs across universities, relevant and applicable to all students. That's not the only rankings that ask a similar question. So STARS, which I also referred to earlier, has a similar question where it asks if the institution adopted one or more sustainability learning outcomes that apply to the entire student body. And so in your answer, you referred to accreditation and professional requirements. And I'm wondering if you can speak about how much motivation that gives programs and universities to adopt these kind of changes, and what would you try to advocate for accreditation bodies to do to be able to more effectively drive that change across universities?
Sure. First, I'm going to just give Victoria a compliment. I'm always impressed by JSEC, by the commitment and the efforts and the interesting things that the student body does. So I would like to congratulate you all on the work that you do, and it's much appreciated by faculty members as well. Okay, back to your question, Carola. So I have mixed opinions about this topic related to standards and rating systems, and these are really my opinions. They signal what's increasingly important to society. From that perspective, they're important. But I've been working on sustainability since 1993, so yes, almost 30 years. So I can sincerely say that I'm glad to see growing societal importance of sustainability and social responsibility topics. I spent so far the most of my career where they weren't as important, and so now it's pretty exciting that they are important and getting the attention that they deserve. But I have two concerns with focusing on standards and rating systems. So first, I'm not sure that they always measure what's important. I study corporate sustainability reporting, much of which has been driven by reporting standards, rating systems, disclosure requirements, and other forms of recognition. And this has been going on for a couple of decades now. And, business is still contributing to the climate crisis, to structural inequality, to other environmental and social problems. And I'm not saying that standards and rating systems have not led to improvements, but what I can say is that to date, they haven't generated enough improvement. And so that's one concern I have. And I just would hate for us to be fixated on standards and rating systems. Second, I do wonder if sometimes they are a distraction. So it can be really labor intensive to do all of the things necessary to assemble and disclose the required information and to create effective narratives, to receive high enough of a sustainability rating, both for businesses and for universities and other organizations that are achieving to acquire those recognitions. So if that effort actually leads to more sustainable outcomes, then great, but I'm not sure if it does. And so I think what we need to do is ask ourselves if investing our time differently would lead to more sustainable outcomes. And I would hope that the rating systems and the standards would start to focus on what are the actual actions that lead to more sustainable outcomes. So, I think that rating systems and standards are important signals. Don't get me wrong. I think they're important signals. I think it's important to constantly be improving them. And we're seeing that, for example, within business, we're seeing this move towards science-based targets. We haven't, my research is focusing on science-based targets, and we're not getting it right yet, but hopefully if we continue to collaborate and have open dialogue, we can develop science-based targets that mitigate climate change in a fair and equitable way. But anyway, so I think that we need to make sure that we get the rating systems right. And I think that they're a starting point. But, what I personally hope for, when I'm working and teaching sustainability, I'm not hoping that we, get some recognition. What I'm hoping for is that the content in our courses results in graduates who, eventually make decisions differently in their future careers, and that it results in graduates who see sustainability and social responsibility as, just the right way of doing business. So I'm not sure if I answer your question, but that's my perspective on standards and rating systems.
You did. I think how I say this, like reputation rankings are always controversial in some sense. I feel like, in some situations is quite objective, and it depends on how rich the university is and how much capacity they have to go through the labor of putting things together. And so that's one side of it. One side that I like to sort of point out to is that in some situations, there are also a list of best practices. At least that's the goal of them. Whether they always do that properly or not, that's a different story. But I think they're, and some, I hope they improve over time. But in as an advocate, I look towards these kind of ratings and find, is there a best practice that I can point to? Because whether we like it or not, reputations tend to be a big motivation for universities to for change. And It's sort of just my little perspective.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think we just can't assume that because a rating system has some requirement, that requirement is, is generating impact. We have to step back and reflect and ask, okay, is it actually generating impact? It's the same with corporate rating systems as well.
Okay, I think Maxime's connection have dropped. Okay, so I think maybe I don't know what I should do. Okay, well, I think maybe we just stop here. I was hoping to get Maxime. No, okay. Okay, so I'll just say I just want to say thank you to you and Shannon and Victoria as well as Maxime. It's been a really wonderful conversation. I'm super excited to see GMSB, leading the effort of or leading by example within their own student body, to make sure that they all have the tools that they need to contribute to solutions within their respective careers. So I'm super excited for that, and thank you, Shannon, for all your work throughout this process and all the research you've been doing for so many years. I think it's an inspiration. I think I hope other faculties, other business schools across Canada follows the lead, and also other faculties inside Concordia and outside of Concordia, whether they're related to business or not, also follows the lead. And also, Victoria, I want to say thank you very much. I've been working closely with JSEC for many years, ever since you've been leading the development of sustainability policy at CASA, the GMSB Student Associations, which I think it was the first sustainability policy for that student association. And the survey was Maria afterwards, and your team as well. So thank you very much for your leadership on this. Now, Maxime is not here, but I also want to give him a big thank you for his leadership nationwide, and trying to build a movement and momentum across Canada to get this done. So thank you again very much, and thank you for the people who are watching and will watch in the future.